Hello, everyone. You're all very welcome to Underground Cinema. As you all know, for the past couple of weeks now, we've been interviewing as many filmmakers and documentary makers and actors and crew as we possibly can on the run up to the Underground Cinema Awards, which are just only 2 weeks away. So I'm delighted to say that I've got with me this evening Ciara Kelleher, who directed a brilliant documentary called What Makes Great Sex, and she's been nominated in the Best Documentary category. You're very welcome, Ciara.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
Not at all, and congratulations on your documentary. We were just speaking there just before we came on air there because we screened the documentary in Delary in September. It was the final film of the program. It was on the Sunday at 6 o'clock. I can remember the time because the place was packed, and it went down really well. And then online, we screened it during the year as well online. And again, it got very, very good numbers. You must be very pleased with it, Ciara, yeah?
Oh, I'm delighted. Yeah, I did a test screening earlier on in the year with some people I really trust at the Dublin Filmmakers and stuff. And even after the Underground screening, it was lovely to get some great feedback for it. And I always really appreciate it because, you know, when you make something, you're putting your soul out there. So it was lovely. It was really nice to get some positive feedback from it.
Great. Well, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the film and what inspired you to create this documentary.
Well, I wanted to make something around women's pleasure. I felt growing up that there was an area that was kind of uncovered. There was a lot of different questions and stuff like that. And I spoke about it at the Dublin Filmmakers, which is kind of a group and everybody meets on a Monday and helps each other out and stuff like that and gives advice. And a couple of members of the filmmaking group were really encouraging. One person, Ciara Dawn, she was the AD on it. And every week she was like, so where are you with that idea? Where are you with that idea? And the film is very much about education and women's pleasure. To have women so interested in the idea, like myself, it was like, okay, this must be a sign. This is something that has stuck in all of our minds for a reason. So that's kind of how it got started. She was a big driving force because she believed in the idea. You know, I have sometimes I'm an ideas person, so it was really nice to have someone in kind of my corner. And two of us liaised really heavily on the whole thing, who we'd get. We contacted companies. We did loads of different background research to try and figure out who to have in it. And I think that's really how it got started. It was having them and Ciara believe in the idea that kind of made me believe in it more and made it kind of bring it into fruition.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can't stress the importance of groups like Dublin Filmmakers, and there's no Wi-Fi down in Wicklow as well. And you know, these sort of groups are so important because they encourage you. And we're the same at Underground Cinema as well. The whole idea is to encourage you to be constructive and not destructive. To really lend a hand and try and help you get your film made along the way. And I was really impressed by, you mentioned who to get in the film. I was really impressed by your panel, so to speak. I mean, you had Emily Power-Smith, you had Siobhan O'Higgins, yeah,
Yep.
Liz Carroll. I mean, these are all experts. How did you get these girls on board?
It started with Emily Power-Smith. She was on the Tom and Kieran show back in the day. I hadn't actually seen it at the time, but she's Ireland's first sexologist. And she went off and studied in Australia. She brought sexology as a concept back here. I got in touch with her and I had a screening call with her, and she is really wonderfully eloquent. She had so much to say, so much information, expertise on the subject. She then kindly steered me towards the other two interviewees. She's quite close with Dr. Siobhan O'Higgins, who's based in Galway. And so we went down to Galway to interview Siobhan, and she's kind of been working in this area since the 90s. So before sex education was a thing, she was in schools trying to get it to be a thing. And at the time, she was also trying to revamp the junior cert curriculum. So she felt really, really important for the whole education aspect. And then also through Emily, we got in touch with Lilith Carol, who is
Yeah.
a representative from the Trans Equality Network of Ireland. So she at the time was equality officer, and she could speak to the lack of sex education there is around, I suppose, trans rights, different things like that. You know, I felt that growing up there was a real lack of knowledge on women's pleasure. But if you're going into trans pleasure, it's such a different ballgame altogether. There's no mention of it. You know, even now as an adult, I learned so much from her. I had no clue, you know. And I think when you're talking about women's pleasure, it has to be inclusive. It can't start from a place where we're only talking about a subset. And the documentary, to be honest, kind of ended up also applying to everyone. Everyone's going to have better sex if they're educated on women's pleasure. You know, the whole idea is that all parties enjoy it. So those three were really detrimental to the documentary and telling the story. And we had some other people we were interested. Like we have a little Vox Doc section at the very end where you ask people on the streets of Galway what makes great sex. But I think the expertise really give it that kind of made it go that extra mile. It's you're learning from experts what makes great sex, you know.
Yeah, no, they were really, really good. Actually, the running time of the film it's just slightly over 12 minutes, if I remember rightly, Ciara. And you know, for a short film, that's the sort of magic number if you're trying to get it into a film festival, around the 12-minute mark. But when it comes to a documentary, 12 minutes is actually quite short. You must have really struggled. I mean, when you were talking about those three fantastic ladies there, they must have been able to talk for quite some time, and it must have been really difficult in the edit to work out which, you know, what to use in your 12 minutes.
Oh, it was so difficult. And I had the job of initially getting it down. I got it down to 16 minutes. And then Philip Kidd from IdeoSync took over IdeoSync Pictures. He kind of he brought it down to the 12 minutes. He made it spick and span. He did all of that kind of work. And then we brought the animator on board at that stage as well. But yeah, it was very difficult because there was two kind of routes to take. There was a lot of content, and they would make fabulous podcasts, to be honest. Like each interview would make such a good podcast because I learned loads in them. When you have such a short amount of time, it's really difficult because we had the education route, but we also had the medical route. So, you know, we spoke to Lilith, for example, about kind of how difficult it is in Ireland to transition, and how that kind of delays everything when you're trans and you're, you know, learning about yourself, learning about sex, you know, after your transition. So it's really, really difficult because you're starting all that stuff later. And I think that was a really interesting thing to say. But we had started it with the idea that it would be mainly about education. So maybe down the line, I'd love to do a re-edit around the medical route, because Emily touches on that as well, and kind of the lack of knowledge around women's bodies and how in a lot of ways we're also only catching up on this. You know, like saying COVID, there was new discoveries around the pill. There's new things coming out the whole time, and we're kind of catching up when it comes to women's bodies. So it was really, really difficult to choose the route. But one thing that Emily pointed out was that in the biology books, you know, you have the whole kind of male reproductive system, but you don't have the woman's clitoris. Things are taken out that are for women's pleasure. So we kind of decided to focus more on the educational route, because it's a great starting point, and it's also a great way to start the conversation. It's like people go, what makes great sex? And they're looking for a, you know, kind of like a false safe answer. But it does start with education. So that's kind of where the documentary starts, how we have developed shame, how education has kind of led to shame in some ways, and how we can combat that.
Yeah. When I was watching it now, Ciara, I definitely felt like a lot of people make shorts. You're gonna get a lot of people that make shorts, and it's almost like sort of a precursor to doing a feature. And I definitely felt that it was so interesting. I just felt that this could be a great 35 minutes, 45 minutes. You know, it could really do. with a little bit more. You know, I think it could be great if you pushed it a little bit more. It's great as it is, Ciara. I'm not saying it's not, but it's so interesting. Because I haven't come across a documentary like this before, to be honest. We haven't had something like this in. So I really enjoyed it, and I just think it'll be, if it was around the 40 minutes mark, I think it'd be great.
That's so lovely of you to say. I have all the footage still. I mean, there's so much untapped potential in the film because of the interviewees. You know, I think we
Yeah,
really struck gold getting the people we got. And as well, it's such an honest topic. Like, they're all really open, really considerate. And I'd love to do something with it in the future.
yeah. I was just reading some information on Film Freeway that you sent me about yourself. So you went to a Catholic school, and I went to a Catholic school. I went to an all-boys school. It was a Christian brother school in Inverleary. So I was a bit older than you, Ciara, in the 70s and the 80s. And sex education in my school wasn't taught until I went into secondary school. So that would have been in the late 80s. And that basically was a lay teacher sitting at the top of the class reading from a book, just page after page after page, no questions until the bell rang, and he walked out the door. That was our sex education in a Christian brother school. You know, things have changed an awful lot over the past 20 and 30 years. But I thought about this film, and I was saying to myself, wow, wouldn't it be great maybe if this film was actually shown in schools? Have you thought about that?
I would love that. And me and Ciara talked about that kind of early on. We didn't want to make it too provocative, you know, with the
Yeah,
B-roll and stuff like that, because we had B-roll options that were provocative. We filmed in a sex shop, but we decided animation was actually the best way to go with the B-roll, because the whole point of the film is to kind of educate, to start a conversation. So in my dreams, I would love if it was shown in schools, or, you know, it was kind of even shown. It's only 12 minutes to introduce the topic of why we feel shame, how education can stop shame, you know, female pleasure and what makes great sex. There's 4 very specific sections to the film. So it's a great introduction to anything on sex ed.
yeah. I'm just thinking about just the making of the film itself. And what did you find were the challenges when you were making the film?
I think that's a good question. It was initially hard to get people, you know, we contacted some people about the film. It was very difficult with the B-roll. I think that was one of our biggest obstacles, because we talked about doing a produced scene where 2 people meet at a nightclub, or different things like that. Then we went and filmed in a couple of different locations. We filmed a bit at Outhouse. We filmed at a sex shop. We had a couple of things like that, but then in the end, they didn't really fit into the film. They were very much B-roll that you were using as a cutaway shot, as opposed to like what the person was talking about. So we ended up going with animation. We found a really good animator, Lauren Woods, and again, really, really lucky with her, because, you know, it was an unfunded project. So a lot of people that were working on it really believed in the topic and kind of wanted to make it. So it was really, really great in that way. So that's the other obstacle, making an unfunded short.
Yeah,
You know, this was my 3rd short. I had made like a short horror film previously, and I co-directed a documentary called Movers and Shapers that was in the circuit last year, both unfunded. You know, we kind of did the GoFundMe thing, and yeah, then with What Makes Great Sex, I covered obviously the expenses and different bits like that. But it's really difficult to make a film with no money. So that's always a big thing, but people get that, you know.
yeah. Like, and you're working around everybody's schedule as well. You know, so where ideally you'd love to be able to go off and shoot, you know, 2 or 3 days in a row, maybe get it over and done with. When you have no money and you're working around people's schedules, it can go on for weeks and months even. Um,
Yeah, because no
it's
one should lose money, you know, by doing the project. That's the other thing.
Well, yeah, you're a thoughtful director at that. You know, I mean, you are thinking about the cast and the crew, and people have lives outside of what you're trying to do, and they're giving up their time. But I really think that your whole crew did a fantastic job on it. And if you look back at some of we're talking about animation as well. Animation's been used in a lot of sex education videos. It's a really, really good tool to use to try and get some important messages across. I've seen it. It even goes back to the 50s and the 60s, where you'd see animation being used in sex education videos. So it's a good move to use it.
Yeah, and I had kind of I'm working on another project at the moment, and it's being produced by this guy, Cy Woods is his name. I'd met him for coffee at some stage while working on What Makes Great Sex, and I had been looking for an animator, and he said my daughter's an animator. And it was really by the goodwill and kind of, here's where networking comes in, even though, it's not really networking because you become friends with people. But yeah, I was really lucky to meet her because she was fresh at the time anyway, out of college, and she can really do any style. So, there's a real element to luck to being able to make good quality stuff on a low budget, because obviously good people expect to be paid. And then if you're learning, the quality mightn't be there. So, there was a couple of people on the film that I just really was lucky with the crew.
Yeah. When you were talking to your experts, were there any sort of surprising insights or revelations that they that took you aback, maybe?
Oh, there are so many. Yeah, they had loads. I think after every interview, me and Ciara were like, okay, what did you find about that one? And we both were like, kind of back and forth. I can't pick out any one specific one, but the interviews were, some of them were hours, and they were amazing.
It sounds like a real learning curve for you as well. I mean, you seem to have learned an awful lot during the making of it, which is fantastic. Did you have to do much research in advance before the shoot?
I didn't. I initially wanted to go in kind of like a Louis Theroux style thing.
Oh, right.
I was always very embarrassed talking about sex. And I thought it would be fun to go in with kind of a 2-cam setup. And there was me as the interviewer sharing a bit about the personal story and having the embarrassment there, because I think actually this documentary really has desensitized me to talking about sex. But at the time it was like, I'd be mortified. I'd go all red. I'd start giggling, I was very nervous talking about it. And I, kind of went in thinking that would be a good approach, because it's like the interviewer who has a lot to learn. And then throughout the process, we really wanted the quality to be there of the shots. We've had some sort of it's difficult because you're compromising the quality of the shots if you're doing that whole handheld, we're walking along, we're discussing things thing. And really, because we wanted it to be about education, it was more important that we got the message across over what I had initially planned. So I feel like I've just gone off on a bit of a tangent there. So that was your question around prep. On the topic itself, I went in very blue-eyed. I was just, tell me, I want to know, which was great in some ways, because I learned loads. And one thing I found really interesting that I'd love to explore more was Emily's discussion around married couples, because there wasn't time to explore it in the documentary, but she counsels. And the idea that you might have grown up in the 70s, 80s, whenever, and you're married and you're in your 50s and you're thinking, okay, now it's important that I get a bit of pleasure in my married life. How do we revamp things? And she actually touched on that quite a bit and explored that, which was great, because that's something I'd love to explore more. And it's something that I think a lot of women kind of, if the man is happy, they're like, okay, that's great. But there's definitely room to explore your own sexuality and desires in your 50s, 60s, 70s, even if it's anew.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I'm wondering, what has the feedback been from women who have viewed the film so far?
So far, so good, thank God. I did the test screening and people really liked it. There was a lot of people kind of coming up afterwards and asking about the experts and different things they said. A lot of people liked that it's a bit more open as well. Like, I haven't had negative feedback yet, which is great. Thank God.
Great. So it's an unusual film to see being submitted to a film festival. It was certainly the first documentary of its kind for us. I definitely had to screen it. Had to be picked. Had to be screened because I definitely thought, the audience our audience, which are underground independent filmmakers who love anything. There was definitely an audience for it. I'm just wondering, what is your festival journey like at the moment? Has it been submitted to many festivals? Has it been accepted to many festivals?
I'm very much at the beginning of some of the festivals. I've submitted to a couple on Film Freeway, and it's been luckily accepted into a couple as well, which is quite nice. I want to do some more screenings if possible. I'd love to get the cast and crew together and do a couple of screenings, but obviously I might have to wait till the festival run is over for that. And then my next step is actually to try and get in touch with some press about the topic as well, which would be really, really great. Down the line, I'd like to release the episodes as podcasts as well. The different interviews, I would like to do that. So I have a couple of things. I would like the project to have a long lifespan, hopefully.
Yeah, because I think, you mentioned Film Freeway there. It's probably one of the best tools for a filmmaker to use. And indeed, on my end, it's a fantastic tool for me. I think it'll do very well, in some of the documentary film festivals. There's so many around the world that it could be entered into. The running time is bang on, for a short documentary. As I said, I'd love to see it, a tad longer. I think it would be great. You have enough footage there. Maybe it might be a project that you might do in the future. Have you any? Have you anything else in the pipeline? Are you working on, apart from? I know you're working with this one now. So you still got your festival journey to go, but have you got anything else in mind for the future?
I'm directing a short film. It's called Fraternus. We're shooting it in about 3 weeks' time, and it's about an elderly priest who has dementia, and he remembers in his final moments his younger brother who passed away when he was younger. So it's quite a heavy topic. It's a fiction live action piece, and it's my second time directing fiction, which is great because it's such a different ball game. And I think I'm really interested in this project because I do love projects that have kind of a human interest story. This is based off a true story, and it's also I do think there's people who are forgotten in the community that are a bit older that are ill. It's something people can really relate to as well, a family member being sick, but there is a lot of people who are kind of by themselves and forgotten about. So I would like to shine a light on that, as well as kind of the subtle dementia as well that's in the film.
Yeah. Well, look, I wish you the very best of luck in that. It sounds like a very interesting story. And listen, thanks so much for sending in your documentary. We really enjoyed it when we screened it in Delary and certainly online. And congratulations on your nomination in the Best Documentary category. Well done.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always so exciting to be nominated.
Yeah. I mean, the standard of documentaries that were sent into us this year were fantastic. I'm a huge fan of documentaries. I love them. I'd be up all night watching documentaries. No, I thought your film was great, and I hope it goes. I have no doubt it's going to go down really well on the festival circuit. It's got a good few years yet to go.
Oh, thank you. That's so lovely to hear.
Okay, Ciara. Well, listen, thanks a million, and we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Okay, take care.